And welcome to the daily space weather. And then there were 4 Earth-directed coronal mass ejections, the latest from about 6 o'clock this morning on October 17th. So we're expecting coronal mass ejections to start arriving late in the day today, and the next 3 or 4 days should feature a series of minor coronal mass ejection impacts. We'll tell you all about it and show you the most detailed imagery you'll find in the known universe here at the Smash News Network, least busted name in news. That's the past 24 hours from SDO, the Solar Dynamics Observatory. And this latest CME came from this area right down here, right at the end of the video. Right there. More plasma is headed this way. Let's take a brief look at some close-ups. A crazy number of plasma filaments continue to dominate the Earth-facing portion of the solar disk. A new sunspot has risen in the northeast. That has been the location of the most significant X-ray production. A high-level C-class event did occur. That was at about 1600 Universal Time. And it's from that new sunspot group that's barely peeked over the northeastern limb up there. There's an extreme close-up of that. It was like a C 9.9 class event, nearly an M-class flare, but not quite. Also, massive plasma filaments in the southern hemisphere. We named that one above the Earth scale. You see that dark absorption feature. Another one of the larger filaments that we've ever covered on the channel. And speaking of the channel, a little update about some changes that are coming. The content is coming down forever. Just kidding, folks. The content's not coming down. However, we are anticipating a move to the afternoon. So these videos have been coming out sometime by late morning, sometime between early morning and late morning. Expect them to come out in the late afternoon instead. So, a little bit of a change there. And it'll affect the meteorology segments a little bit, but for the most part, it won't really be a huge difference. Just who gets to attend the live premieres and so forth. So, should be interesting. In the meantime, press the like button. Press subscribe. If you're new to the channel, do yourself a favor and get the world's most comprehensive daily space weather and most detailed solar imagery, cosmology segments, and meteorology segments on the regs. It's the most detailed daily space weather in the known universe. Have you pressed like yet? Smash staff, have they pressed like? Apparently she's on your side, lying about pressing the like button. Don't you be lying about pressing the like button, or we'll find you and we'll shame you. For shame. How dare you not press the like button? All right, we're going to continue the video as soon as you, yes you, press the like button. By the way, thanks to everybody who's left comments the past 6+ years. Here at the Smash News Network, least busted name in news, we read all comments, even if we are unable to respond to them all. Press like, share, press all of the things. Because reasons. If you want to support the channel via subscription services, get additional content at smashomash.com/smashteam. There's a bronze level, which costs you $0 per month. There's a silver level, which is $2.99 a month. There's a gold level, which is $9.99 a month. There's a gold annual paid-up subscription, which is kind of like getting 4 months for free, sort of, as it includes complimentary merch. smashomash.com/smashteam. If you want additional content, that's the place to do it. We're all over the internet as well. So help us out with clicks. Here come some paid promotions. The first one is our Hemp Lucid shop. So this is a paid promotion via our Hemp Lucid shop. You can find a link to our Hemp Lucid shop below this video. If you're in the market for CBDs, immune, stress, and sleep stacks, you can save big on those. Mushroom gummies, save a few bucks on those. By the way, the CBD lip balms are back in stock. They make great gifts. If you haven't tried out CBDs, perhaps try them out. The most popular products are the water-soluble CBD tinctures. There are also MCT suspension tinctures, which have a longer onset and a longer duration. The water-solubles have a shorter onset and a shorter duration. Again, save big on sleep, immune, and stress stacks. Save 15 bucks on those products from our Hemp Lucid affiliate, linked below this video in the description. Also, there's an Amazon link as well. Yes, Amazon. And I've been drinking the Cameron's Scandinavian Blend Whole Bean Organic for quite some time, and that is the paid endorsement from the Amazon storefront. Yes, we make a tiny, tiny commission on the sale of these products. So perhaps if you're in the market for our coffee products, head to amazon.com/shop/smashomash. You can also find spaceware, eclipse glasses, even electromagnetic radiation reflecting bucket hats. But today's featured product from the Amazon storefront is Cameron's Whole Bean Organic Scandinavian Blend. Now that might look expensive at $23.38. However, that is a 4-pound bag. So, and a consumer tip, when we switched to organic coffee, we stopped getting the jitters. So, that's not any kind of a medical claim, but your coffee has pesticides on it. Anyway, here is, if it's not organic, here is the featured product of the day from our merch shop. And we want to see this merch emblazoned all over everywhere, as it is a message of freedom and liberty. Universum liberate. Maybe that's too reckless for you, but guess what? I do not care. If that's too reckless, I do not care. If I could wave my magic wand, I'd set everybody free. So, that's the motto of the Galactic Federation Special Forces. The symbolism represents the Milky Way galaxy, signals strength, integrity, and security, and instantaneous galactic scale reach. So tell your friends and foes I said Universum Liberate. If they think I'm in the Illuminati, then that's fine. Frighten your friends and foes with a Galactic Federation Special Forces shirt and convince them that you're in the Illuminati. Because, folks, Machiavelli said it the best. It's better to be feared than loved. So, Universum Liberate. And let's get back to space. Right after I say, welcome to the Neo-Renaissance. If you haven't seen the homepage, smashomash.com, visit us on social media. You can find our links there. YouTube channel. We're on the platform formerly known as Twitter, Instagram, etc. In 2018, a crack YouTube unit was sent to social media prison for a crime we didn't commit. We promptly escaped the maximum security social media stockade of the internet underground, where we survivors produces a fortune. If you have a problem, if no one else can help, and if you can find the content, maybe you can maybe you can hire the Smash team. You can certainly hire the Smash team. Right there is a link. Get your additional content, especially at the gold level. Next, yesterday plus today. That's October 16th and 17th to date. And we've had a dip in the sunspot number, not an increase. So I thought sunspot number was coming up. Sunspot number went down precipitously. Where do you see the sunspot number? You're going to be hiding in your bunker because you're going to say, oh, no, it's a grand solar minimum. It isn't. It's a temporary lull in activity as we ramp up and up and up to solar maximum. There's the magnetogram for that same period, October 16th and October 17th to date. That Cameron's Scandinavian Blend Whole Bean Organic sure is tasty. I like my coffee black, although sometimes I put stuff in it also. And let's talk volcanoes. Guess what? Some seismic unrest going on underneath the Campe Flegrei caldera complex. As high as a 3.6 magnitude quake there. That's what that map is showing, the location of those earthquakes. So perhaps, certainly, some magma moving around there underneath Campe Flegrei. Bezimiani produced a 3.5 kilometer pyroclastic ash cloud. That's a flight level of about 12,000 feet there over Bezimiani on Kamchatka. Sakurajima, 12,000 foot ash plume there. Sakurajima is continuing to be at much higher levels than normal there. Sakurajima flight level 120, a 12,000 foot ash plume. Ibu on Indonesia, 8,000 foot ash plume as it explodes. 14,000 foot ash plume over Semeru. It's a flight level 140 as Semeru explodes. Tukono exploding, 7,000 foot ash plume. And the home reef of Tonga now producing predominantly steam eruptions, as opposed to creating new real estate, which is what we covered yesterday. Popocatépetl, volcanic ash not detected. Don't assume it's not erupting and decide to pole vault the caldera. If you're going on a volcanic vacation, leave the vault pole at home. Don't pole vault the caldera. It could be unhealthful. Sangay exploding, flight level 220. I think that's an uptick there in Ecuador. 22,000 foot ash plume. Revenador exploding, 15,000 foot ash plume. Continuous emissions from Sabancaya of ash. Volcanic gas and ash. Volcanic ass and gash. Volcanic gas and ash. Also Villarrica exploding. No indication on the flight level there over central Chile. Perhaps don't fly your home-built ultralight aircraft or hang glider over the caldera at Villarrica. Seismic activity. And we've got some quakes from yesterday still on the list because we're coming at you a little earlier this morning. So here come the quakes of a 5 or greater magnitude. That is the past 90 days. So there was a 5.7 at Japan, and there was a 6.4 at Alaska around midday Universal Time yesterday. That was at 11:35. We did cover it in yesterday's video because, again, we're coming at you a little earlier today, so that does overlap. As these are the daily space weather videos, and they don't have a set time at the moment, but they might have a set time coming soon. Argentina had a 5.0. That was at 18:33 Universal Time yesterday evening. Since then, it has calmed down a bit, although Iran had a 5.1 magnitude foreshock, and then a 5.5 magnitude quake at 5:10 Universal Time this morning, and then an aftershock of a 5.3 at 8:22, and that is where the seismic activity report ends. So here's the past 24 hours in SDO 304 angstroms. Oh, Camerons, you're doing a fine job. And again, the latest coronal mass ejection that's headed our way is from this group, this active region right down here. I'm not even sure if that's a sunspot anymore. A prime example of how you can see a coronal mass ejection with no major flare, no sunspot. Good stuff. Ionized helium there from the Solar Dynamics Observatory. And how about an even closer look? There you go. Again, the most active X-ray producing region is in the upper left there, the northeastern limb. The latest CME, expected to arrive, let's see, sometime around midday or later on the 20th. So looking at 3 days here of coronal mass ejection impacts, now 4 likely to strike Earth in some capacity. Yesterday there were 3. Today there are 4. And again, they should start arriving sometime around midday today on October 17th. 10.7 centimeter radial flux has dipped again to 144 solar flux units. So if you're spooked of an inactive sun, for some reason people are spooked of an active sun and they're spooked of an inactive sun. They can't decide which is scary and which is not scary. The answer is neither is scary particularly, but anyway, the sunspot number did come back up. All right, so seeing a different report there from Solon.info. Anyway, the radial flux is what we're talking about at the moment. Radial flux is at 144 solar flux units, represented by this black line over the past year. Space Weather Enthusiast dashboard isn't forecasting any. Oh, they are forecasting a little bit of geomagnetic unrest late in the day tomorrow. So NOAA must have seen some of those CMEs, And look at the solar wind, incredibly slow there. We'll get to it. Currently showing up at 300 kilometers a second. And let's check out the forecast here from NOAA's Enlil spiral. So NOAA really not modeling any of the 4 CMEs that are headed toward Earth right now. And in NOAA's defense, they don't like false positives, but you would think they'd have the CMEs modeled in some fashion. They just don't have them modeled at all. Now, NASA does have the latest one modeled, and they're showing it missing to the east, which is bizarre because it came from the west. This model is completely jacked up, in my opinion. It's almost directly headed toward Earth, and if it's going to miss in any direction, it's going to miss to the south. NASA has it missing mostly to the north. So I don't know what is going on with this model. This model is jacked up. So that ought to be redone. Next, Earth's magnetic moment from space. And again, we've got an extremely slow and an extremely diffuse solar wind at the moment. That's the past 4 hours of plasma density. It's depicting protons per cubic centimeter. And all that white is low-density plasma region. The blue is high density, so very low-density plasma and very low magnetohydrodynamic pressure, which is what's depicted here for the past 4 hours. Those units are nanopascals. So we should see some significant signals when CMEs start to impact later in the day today on the 17th. Earth's magnetic moment from the ground, pretty boring there as well. With such a weak solar wind, it's what you would expect. This depicts changes to Earth's B field, geospace delta B. The B field being the field that goes through the magnet, this magnet being Earth. The units here are nanotesla magnetic flux density for the past 4 hours, and that is pretty weak. Look at the KP index, very low levels here. People are going to be running around with their hair on fire saying, "Oh my God, it's a grand solar minimum. The sun's shutting down. Get in your bunkers, folks, because the only thing spookier than a high activity star is a low activity star." Oh my God. And by the way, if all evidence in the real world refutes your hypothesis, abandon the hypothesis. KP index is currently at 0.67. Next, solar wind, like I said, shockingly low here. Barely 300 kilometers per second. It doesn't get much slower than that, although we've clocked it as low as about 260 some in the past week or so. So another very weak heliospheric current sheet. The South Pole oriented current sheet. Just like the last one, super weak, as the sun is hoarding plasma. The sun's hoarding plasma, folks. Solar wind density here, less than 1.5 protons per cubic centimeter. Solar wind speed only 301 kilometers per second. Incredibly slow and incredibly diffuse. GOES magnetometers are smooth. Expect to see some gyrations in those, as 4 coronal mass ejections have a possibility of earthly impacts. Those GOES magnetometers are located in geosynchronous near equatorial orbits. They're at about 23,500 miles of altitude and next to heliospheric current sheet. So this is what I was just talking about. Earth is in a South Pole current sheet depicted here in red. We've got a ways to go until we see a North Pole current sheet. Still a few days out, if not several days out. That's the top view ecliptic plane field plot. One of the best predictive devices that we ever show on the channel. Next, our line of sight field plot. Here the sun's B field is depicted in blue. Again, the field that goes through the magnet, this magnet being the sun. Polar fields in red and green for south and north respectively, and the gong magnetogram in grayscale, depicting the photosphere's magnetism. So, yeah, that's what's going on. South Pole current sheet. And here's our line of sight coronal hole plot. So what do we got? What do we got? South pole coronal holes here in the north, and one around the equator. Let's bring up the latest image before we cut to 211 angstroms SDO. So there you go. South pole coronal holes here rotating in. So basically, these are south and these are north. So there is October 16th and 17th to date. And there is one transequatorial coronal hole over there in the east, which will get more defined in the coming days. It's right about here. A lot of bumpy plasma is preventing that from looking clear. It should appear to open up in about 2 days. It should be much more well-defined. It looks pretty well-defined on the gong. Not that well-defined. It's pretty small. It's slightly to the south. It's like down here somewhere. And let's get to sunspots. Check it out. The Royal Observatory of Belgium reporting a sunspot number here of less than 80 sunspots. Sunspot number there at about 77, it looks like to me. And let's take a look at the flare monitor and flare scoreboard. So the biggest flare producer has been sunspot 3469. That one doesn't have a name yet. It's this new group that's just peeking up over the northeastern horizon. I should say northeastern limb, because it's not really a horizon, is it? Yes. So anyway, that's the scenario. And let's take a look at sunspots from SDO. There's a 24-hour video for you. We've added 171 angstroms to highlight the active regions. Sunspots depicted there in SDO Continuum, the HMI instrument. The SDO has two separate instruments. One shows ultraviolet light, the other one shows the continuum and polarimeter to create the magnetograms that we show regularly on the channel. Anyway, we've dropped 171 angstroms. There's just the continuum, and not a lot of changes happening there. The sunspots on the Earth-facing portion of the disk are largely unchanged for the past 24 hours. Which brings us to energetic particles. And we ain't got none. No SEPs. Ghost proton flux remains flatlined. Largest flare of the past 24 hours was this. It was like a C9.98 or something like that. Let's bring up the 1 day. C9.9 approximately. Just about at 1600 Universal Time there. That was the largest flare of the past 24. We've got some spectacular close-ups of that for you. Here is 131 angstroms from SDO. And we've got some tight zoom-ins at 94 angstroms also. So hold on to your hats. There's an extreme close-up in 94 angstroms. What, that's not close enough for you? Again, peak flux was around 1600 Universal Time yesterday on October 16th. Is that close enough? And here's that same zoom in the SDO 131 angstroms wavelength. Is that okay? Is that good? Is that a money shot for you? All right, cheers. Next, we're going to look at a star chart before we talk about some interesting, I guess you could say, cosmology stories. I don't know. We have to ask ourselves where the line is between astronomy and cosmology. I don't know. Anyway, this is what's going on overhead Lehigh Valley. We've got Jupiter in a setting mode over there. We've got Venus high in the sky. If you're up before dawn, you might get a great view of the third brightest object there. Sun has yet to rise over Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania. That's a star chart from skyandtelescope.org. Next, the solar system forecast. Is where things are today. Coming off of the new moon, we've got a tiny sliver of a moon right now. Let's advance this 1 week. There's where things will be on the 24th of October. We will have a gibbous waxing at that point. And let's talk cosmology. So today's astronomy photo of the day comes from the Atacama Large Millimeter Array. It is a radio telescope. It operates at wavelengths from 3.6 to 0.32 millimeters, which is, that's microwave, I think. If you want to read about the Atacama Large Millimeter Array, there's a great article on Wiki about it. And today's astronomy photo is of PDS 70. So PDS 70 is an interesting protoplanetary system, not because of the star, but because of the planet. So there's a Jupiter-like planet, which is this bright spot right here. That bright spot right there. And what's interesting about this is, well, we'll get to it here in a minute, the PDS 70 system, a young T Tauri class star in the constellation Centaurus, located at a distance of about 370 light years. And again, there's a Jupiter-like planet in the system. And what's so interesting about that is, and by the way, that image is from the ESA's Very Large Telescope, which takes images between 300 nanometers and 20 micrometers. So that's part of the infrared spectrum there, the Very Large Telescope. Located in Chile. Anyway, this image is the astronomy photo of the day, and there you can see this Jupiter-like planet. And what's interesting about this is that there appear to be moons forming. There is material accreting around that planet. So that's pretty interesting, I suppose. And hence, that's the astronomy photo of the day. So I like it. What about you? It's pretty cool. I mean, I don't have a boner over it, but it's pretty cool. All right, so moving right along to coronal mass ejections. And for some reason, George Mason University is still down. So no imagery from George Mason University, but that's okay. We've got plenty. And we paused this on this morning because there's another Earth-directed coronal mass ejection. So right there it is. Again, it happened around 6 o'clock this morning. It started to emerge from the coronagraph. And it's a partial halo because it's quite directly headed toward Earth. So here's Soho-Lascaux C2 on the left and C3 on the right. We've got C2 a little bit ahead of C3 there. And right at the end, you'll see the latest earthly directed CME, which makes 4 that are on the way, and there it is. You see that? That's legit. And we're going to show you where it came from here in a minute. It looks like multiple events happening at once here, but one of those is quite directly headed toward Earth. Before we show you our custom coronagraphs, we'll also show you stereo A. Stereo A, located where that red dot is. And there are stereo A's coronagraphs. And here comes this morning. And there you can see that just the beginning of that CME there, it cuts off at about 720. There you can see it in the difference imagery. It is certainly a partial halo. And let's cut to our custom coronagraphs. So here's a 24-hour video. SOHO, LASCO C2 and C3, and the SDO 193 angstroms. Also Mercury making its way through the frame there. Let's zoom in a little bit closer here. Again, that latest Earth-directed CME likely to arrive sometime around, let's see, sometime around midday. Came from this area right here. So here's a little closer view. Here we've subtracted the LASCO C3 and we've added 304 angstroms. And watch this area right here. Whoops. So there is some more plasma headed this way. So that's 4 CMEs incoming. Now we're going to get the filaments here. So this is we've subtracted the 304 angstroms and added 171 angstroms. Just for some variety here, this is also pretty good at showing filaments. And you can see some quite significant filaments here right in the Earth-facing portion of the solar disk, right in center heliographic longitudes. So there you go. The likelihood of coronal mass ejections for the next 24 hours is nearly 100%. Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. If you're spooked of space, we feel sorry for you here at the Smash News Network, least busted name in news. So let's cut the filaments. And yeah, a lot of filaments here. So let's bring up the last image here and just to do a count. Here's a rough count. There's 1 filament. Here's 2. Here's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'll say 8 and 9. So at least 9 filaments there on the Earth-facing portion of the solar disk. We did name this one just last night. It's now called the Sonia Agora filament. If you want to name filaments after your friends, foes, or yourself, join us over on the platform formerly known as Twitter. Ta-da! Follow the hashtag #NameThatFilament over there. That's our profile. We won't leave it on the screen very long because we don't want to promote it too much because of the pathetic censorship. By the way, folks, freedom of speech absolutely means freedom of reach. Deboosting is censorship. Now that I got that out of my system, here is by the way, this is Lermonth, Australia we're showing today for filaments. Lermonth, Australia. The ground-based hydrogen alpha telescope there, part of the National Solar Observatory. And there's a great view of filaments. We do have another prominence here rising in the east. Perhaps another active region there hiding behind the southeastern limb. I don't know. I'm not too concerned about it. And before we get to bonus features, here are the past couple of hours from the GOES 16 SUVI. Gotta love the GOES 16 SUVI. I love it enough to stream it all day, every day on smashomash.com/SmashTeam. From the Twitch channel, that is. And we do have a crown prominence here showing up as well at the southern polar region. So expect more of those to continue in the coming couple of years, since we're still like over a year out from solar maximum. Also expect a big uptick in coronal holes coming. Anyway, that's the past couple of hours of ionized helium from GOES 16 SUVI, and let's move on to bonus features, starting with satellite charging hazards. We ain't got none. No charging hazards of the surface or internal variety. So no high-energy electrons getting inside of spacecraft and no low-energy electrons building up outside of spacecraft. The GOES electron flux here remains quite low indeed. That's the past 3 days of radiographic measurements by the GOES 16 and GOES 18. There's the one-year graph to contextualize how low those levels are. Very low levels of electron flux. And here's the NOAA forecast. NOAA is expecting relatively flat levels, and I would expect flat to even lower levels here to happen, again, because we have multiple CME impacts about to start sometime today. So going on for the next 3 days, we should have some pulsations in the solar wind, and there should be significant signals detected, seeing as weak as the solar wind is. Next, we'll show the ionosonde for the F layer, which is located at about 300 kilometers of altitude. And there is the F ionosphere, courtesy of Australian Government Bureau of Meteorology. Of course, the ionosphere puffs up and also gets pressed down. It grows in both directions. It gets taller and it gets lower altitude in the daytime. It becomes an F multi-layer ionosphere, and then on the nighttime side it becomes an F nothing layer. So that's the previous day, showing megahertz, the vibration of the material up there at about 300 kilometers of altitude. Here's the anomalygram, and when you see such unscintillated ionosphere, you can see really high definition of the South Atlantic anomaly, located right about here, right in the center of the South American continent. It shows up very well when there's not a lot of space weather going on. You can see that huge rift there in the ionosphere, the weakest point of Earth's magnetosphere. There's also another slightly less significant ionosphere anomaly right about here, right at the Western African equatorial coast. You could call that the South African anomaly. And here are the latest images. That's 10:45 Universal Time. Ionogram 10:45 Universal Time. Anomalygram, anomaly in megahertz from a 30-day median. Next, WHAM, the whole atmosphere model. It shows total electron content and maximum usable frequency. It's the WHAM, the whole atmosphere model. And that is the nowcast, by the way, not the forecast. So that's what's going on for you radio operators and GPS users. And we show this daily now. It's a new feature on the daily space weather content. We show this before we go to raw total electron content. So we're going to show the forecast, even though it's looking erroneous for the last week. It's free electrons to about 12,500 miles of altitude. Did you know that your GPS satellite must communicate through the inner portion of the outer Van Allen belt, the outer plasmasphere, the inner Van Allen belt, the inner plasmasphere, and the ionosphere in order to get the signal down to your handset? Well, free electrons cause signal refraction. That is what's causing those GPS errors that you get around the equator at noontime. And here is the total electron content forecast, and it's continuing to show levels of electron content here that look erroneously low. I suspect there's some problem with the data. We won't spend much time on that. We will show the North American total electron content anomaly from the 10-day average, however, as this data looks legit. So there it is, and not a lot of anomalies happening. And before we get to meteorology, we will close out space weather with the latest high-res imagery from SDO. So again, this is the region that produced that latest CME, a prime example of how you don't need to see sunspots or solar flares to have coronal mass ejections. That's barely a sunspot. I think there is like 1 or 2 umbrae there, but those are barely classifiable as sunspots. So this group here does have some magnetic complexity. It definitely has some umbral space. So that is still it's actually only a beta class sunspot at this point. Yeah, let's take a brief look at these groups. That one's produced some activity. It's looking pretty weak as well. And this one down here, looking like an alpha class sunspot. And the most active sunspot is this one up here. So let's take a look at that. And that one is I only see one polarity umbra there, folks, so that looks like an alpha class sunspot as well. So another significant decline in sunspot number here in the past 24 hours. A great example of how you can have significant CME production, coronal mass ejection production, without a lot of sunspots. So remember, folks, solar flares and coronal mass ejections are separate phenomena. Don't get them confused, and let's get to meteorology. Today we're looking at the highest and lowest temperatures on the planet. So let's see what we have here. The hottest place in the world right now is Saudi Arabia at 102 degrees. Some portions of Africa are close. But Saudi Arabia is typically going to be the hottest. That's the hottest I can find, 102. The coldest places, well, Antarctica still has the coldest spots. So negative 59 degrees Fahrenheit there, negative 56.9 degrees. We'll say negative 57. However, Greenland is getting close. So Greenland has some areas there that are over 50 degrees below 0 Fahrenheit. 52.4, and it's only autumn on the possession of Denmark, the Isle of Greenland. Anybody know why it's named Greenland? It's named Greenland because Vikings were trying to trick people into purchasing real estate there. They're like, it's green, it's green. Actually, it was during the Viking warm period, but it got white pretty quickly. So, not so green anymore. Greenland, it typically has 5 meters of snow from coast to coast throughout the summertime. Anyway, let's switch to our regularly scheduled meteorology segment. Surface winds and jet streams of the planet. There's the eastern world. Shout out to our viewers from the east side. Make sure you press the like button, leave a comment, press share, tell your friends and foes about the Smash News Network least busted name. In news, here are the jet streams for the eastern world, blowing backwards over the northern Indian Ocean and western Pacific. Here are the jet streams of the central world. Shout out to our viewers from Europe, Africa, and the Middle East. Here are the surface winds, like sands through the hourglass of time. These are the surface winds of your lives. Here are the surface winds of the western world. Looks like some stormy seas going on in the North Atlantic. And these are the jet streams. Cold air being injected especially into the Great Lakes region. We'll get to it. First, pressure. That is the mean sea level pressure. You know, barometric pressure. That's what's going on. Southern hemisphere dominated by high pressure zones. Northern hemisphere dominated by low pressure zones. How about that? And next we've got clouds and fog over the Americas. Again, there is some frigid air, not the refrigerator manufacturer, frigid air from Canada blasting down into the Great Lakes region. And here is some imagery of that. We've got this north to south flow going down the Mississippi Valley. And there you can see that jet stream interaction there. It's looking like a cold day in Chicago. Next, our weather.gov map. We've got some frost advisories there and some high wind warnings in Montana. It's going to get very windy in Montana in the coming 24 to 36 hours. There is your key gale warnings around Florida, Hawaii, and Alaska, and California. So some high winds around coastal areas right now. And here comes some forecasts. First, we're going to show the jet stream forecast, because the jet stream, unlike mankind, is in control of your weather. Yeah, the jet stream, it's responsible for pushing weather from west to east for the most part, and it's also responsible for creating warm and cold spells. It drives equatorial air up to the north, and it drives polar air down toward the equator. And you can see some significant jet stream interactions here. A second cold pulse coming. So the second one's going to be even stronger here, because you can see how powerful that second jet stream is there in about 3 days. The 72-hour GFS 250 millibar wind forecast. Next, temperature anomaly. So in 4 days, more cold air coming to the Great Lakes region. However, in 3 days, most of the country will be anomalously warm. So that's your 72-hour GFS temperature anomaly forecast in degrees Celsius. And here is the pressure and precipitation forecast for the same period and the same model. We show 3-day forecasts because they're accurate. And last but not least, mean sea level pressure and wind for the GFS 72-hour model. And check out those high winds coming to Montana. High winds coming to Montana and then making their way down to Nebraska as well. The north central plains. We'll see some high winds. Also some high winds coming to the Great Lakes there in a few days, especially all of them. Next, lightning, as we're seeing lightning subsiding for the northern hemisphere because, well, it's autumn. Cold air is not able to hold as much moisture as hot air. And here's a real-time lightning map. We've got quite a few strikes here at the moment. Over 700 strikes a minute here. Largely around the eastern Mediterranean and Central America. Next time you hear thunder, check it out, lightningmaps.org. I highly recommend it. And we'll close out this video with U.S. Doppler radar. Clouds and fog and water vapor. There's the full 50-state view. Southern Alaska being affected by a northern Pacific low there as precipitation rolls in. And here is the lower 48 view. Some snow falling in Montana, it looks like. Here is the clouds and fog view, shortwave radiation, low clouds dominating the Gulf of Mexico. Also Tennessee, Kentucky, and Alabama there, featuring a bunch of low clouds, perhaps fog. I think it's low clouds, though. And there is water vapor. When your Doppler radar is unclear, use the water vapor map. If you understand the physics, you'll be able to impress your friends and foes by forecasting your weather. Whether it's your weather all the way from space to Earth, or just your Earth weather, you too can forecast it. We empower our viewers to do just that. So there is, once again, clouds and fog. There is the water vapor map. And here is me returning to the bunker because I'm very spooked. Why? Oh no, it's space. I'm spooked of space, folks. Space, it's so spooky. YouTube channels that are telling you space is spooky are more out of gas than a Tesla orbiting Mars. Anyway, see you soon. Again, I'm headed back to the bunker. In the meantime, I'll have been your host, Dan, a.k.a. Smash-O-Mash, signing off. And may that solar wind be at your back. And I'm going back to the bunker again. All the stupid crap I've heard encourage me to climb in.